Organized religion wants to keep you trapped. Organized religion wants you to think that the church, the faith group, your culty community is the only way to live, and that you will find no source of happiness, life, or a future outside of organized religion. Hi, my name's Liz, and I grew up in the Institute in Basic Life Principles cult, and I talk about whatever's on my mind on my YouTube channel. And I've been seeing a couple videos on TikTok and YouTube, even a podcast video, about leaving organized religion and how it feels like you leave behind everything and coming out of that, and the way you have to start from ground zero with absolutely nothing and work your way to find a third space, community, and your own self again after leaving. And I thought I would talk about that today because that is the experience that I have had, and I think it's a common experience, and it's something a lot of people are in churches too afraid of. Like they're too afraid to leave their community, that speaking up, going against the norm is dangerous. And two, I think people know that this is the experience. Like, you can know that it's hard to leave a culty community, but you don't often get to see it or hear about it. So I think elevating these kind of stories is so important for people outside of religious organizations as well. So the first video I saw on TikTok, and it's this person who is just sharing her story. And every video I've seen of hers lately, I have thought, wow, she articulates this so well. So I think she's like an excellent person to follow on TikTok right now. And also her story, I think, is so important for our day and age.
Organized religion stole my life from me. Let's chat about it. So I have been thinking lately about my life and like what it would look like if I could do what I wanted to do. And it would not be what I'm currently doing. Right now, I'm a mother of 4. I'm married to my high school boyfriend. We've been together 2 decades. And he is a pastor at a church. And I left organized religion about 3 years ago. And when I left organized religion, obviously my husband stayed in organized religion. He is a pastor at a church. But when I left organized religion, I started kind of like trying to figure out what in here is me versus what is the organized religion that I was brought up in, Southern Baptist. I'm in Texas.
That is so real. Like when you first step out of the church, and for me, when I was like trying to figure out what I believed as an adult, it's so hard to untangle the stuff, especially for me, having gone to the basic seminar a million times, twice a year growing up, and then going to ATI conferences and reading the wisdom booklets every day. How much of this is like stuff that I actually think versus what I was taught? Like, I remember I was dating someone one time and my ex said, oh, like the appendix is a useless organ and like it was existed because of evolution. And I was like, wait. No, God made everything. Nothing's useless. And then I was like, wait, I don't even believe in God. So is the appendix useless? I don't know. Like, it was just like in my head. Like, I remember hearing people say, you know, that because of the fall in the garden of good and evil, we lost access to things that our body did, like the appendix. I think they said the appendix made vitamin C, and like we are one of the only mammals that doesn't naturally produce vitamin C. And so they were like, oh, back before the fall, before Adam and Eve fell, their appendix made vitamin C, and that's why they could live forever. And then they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and their appendix stopped producing vitamin C. That's kind of crazy, right? How is that any more of a mythology than the way I was taught that evolution is a mythology? Yeah, it's like really hard, and you realize in just everyday conversations with people, it just confronts you like, oh, do I actually think this, or is this something that a cult leader taught me?
And almost all of everything up here, organized religion. Organized religion is responsible for the way my life looks today. And that's like a really hard pill to swallow, because on the one hand, I'm an adult and I make my own choices, right? Like, I got married at 21. I was an adult. I could make my own choices. Don't hear anything in this video as like, she doesn't want to be married. She hates her husband. She hates her kid. No, stop. It's not that I don't want to be married, and it's not that I hate my husband. I don't. I like being married. I like my husband. I don't hate my kids. I love my children. I'm not a monster. But I would not have made these choices if I knew there were other options available.
That is such a big deal that I feel like people are like, oh, you have free will. Like, it's like they're not holding a gun to your head. You could leave the cult at any time. And it's like, you don't know anyone outside of that religious organization. You don't know anyone who is not married and has kids. You don't know of a woman who lives away from her family and makes her own money. There's not another option presented to you because you don't see it. And that's why, people talk about like diversity and like showing children other options is so important, like showing little girls that they can be astronauts, showing little boys that men cook and clean. Like, that is so important to teach kids that they have options. And when you grow up in evangelicalism, in very culty evangelicalism, women especially are taught there's only one option. There's only one way to live as a woman, and that's to be a wife and mother. And anything outside of that is outside the norm, and not only outside the norm, but it's going to lead you to misery and unhappiness. There are so many times that a preacher will preach about feminism and talk about how evil it is and how women who are feminists are on antidepressants and unhappy and live unfulfilled lives. So, of course, when you're presented with the choice, do you have a job and a career versus being a wife and mom, because that's the only way it is presented, it feels like it's not really a choice at all, because the only way to keep your community, to keep your salvation, to keep your happiness is to be a wife and mom who doesn't rock the boat and break the rules.
That's where I'm angry. Growing up, and I've recently realized, just this year, I've recently realized this. Growing up in Southern Baptist culture, I can't think of a single person, not a single woman, who was single and childless by choice. Didn't exist. If you were single, you were looking for a husband, high and low.
And the crazy thing is they would talk about like single women, but they were all like people who lived long ago, like Mary Slessor or Gladys Aylward or Lottie Moon. And they were missionaries. They did not stay in America, stay in their home countries. They had to leave and go serve in other places to be single and be fulfilled.
You were married, you were trying to have kids. And if you couldn't have kids, you were still trying, you were adopting. It was never, we don't want children. Like, we're choosing not to have, it was never that. Because, ew, what? You can't choose to have no kids. Like, that's not okay. So I never grew up with an example of like any life other than you graduate high school, you go to college, you meet somebody, you get married, and you have kids. And now those kids are your responsibility because you're the wife and the mom, and you take care of them, and you do it all. That's what I was fed. That's what I was told my only option was. And if you like strayed from that, or brought up like, if you did happen to see someone living a fulfilling life that didn't look like that, and you brought that up as like hey, what about this? They were like, that's sin, that's bad, that's from the devil, you're gonna burn in hell, and blah, 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 blah. There was no other option. I didn't get another option.
And as a kid, I remember being like, oh, I see women doing this, like in history. All of those women were presented as like Jezebels. Like, we were constantly reminded of the story of like Jezebel in the Bible and how she wore makeup and like painted her face and her hair and like lured the king of Israel away from following God's law. Like, your option was to be a wife and mother or to be a Jezebel. And any woman who had a career and who chose not to be a wife and mother, or had a career and also was a wife and mom, was a Jezebel. And Jezebels were going to bring about the destruction of the country, because that's what Jezebels do in the Bible. And feminists are Jezebels. And that kind of like teaching about how evil single women are and how evil women who pursue men are, and women who own their sexuality and own who they are, permeates and infiltrates. And really, you do not want to be that woman, because that woman will bring shame and loneliness to her family. She will bring about the destruction of her country and her family, and you will be the cause of all of the problems in the world. Like, just like Eve in the garden and Jezebel, everything's going to be your fault because you're an evil woman.
Literally at my wedding table. Like, I just got married. I go to sit down and have lunch, and people are already, when are you having kids? When are you having kids? When are you having kids? Just barking at me. When are you having kids? When are you having kids?
I also think it's so disturbing that the immediate question to a young couple who's getting married is, when are you having kids at their wedding? Because they also are taught they're not allowed to have intercourse before they get married. Like, there's no, like I was taught, you're not allowed to hold hands or kiss before you get married. And then you're supposed to jump from that, like absolute purity, looking at sex as a disgusting thing that only evil people do, to, oh, now you're married, you must do it, you must have kids, you must procreate, you must make little arrows to send out as in the hands of a mighty man. Like, there's a Bible verse that says that. And it's like, you don't have any time to be like exploring yourself, exploring your sexuality, to discover who you are as a grown adult, and also like enjoying marital relations with your spouse for the first time without the responsibility of, you must start having kids. I personally know people, I remember people who would get married, I would be like, hey, congrats, you're married. They would go on their honeymoon, come back and be pregnant. Like, get pregnant on their honeymoon. I knew many, many couples that this happened to. And with less than a year after their wedding, like 9 months almost to exact, there would be a baby. And that 20-year-old girl was not only a wife, but she was a mom. And they're like baby trapping you in evangelicalism. Before you had the time to have your frontal brain cortex fully developed, you're a wife and mom with the responsibility to raise a new generation of Christians. And if you fail, well, you're a Jezebel. You're evil, and your whole family will be ashamed and unhappy with you because you don't have enough faith to get pregnant right away and raise your kids the right way.
This all came about in my brain recently because some friends of mine, we were having lunch a couple weeks ago, and they went around and asked, like, what'd you want to be when you were a kid? What'd you want to be when you grew up? And I jokingly said a trad wife, because that's exactly what my goal was. When I was young, the pinnacle of success as a woman in Southern Baptism was being a trad wife. That's what you aspired to be. I want to just have babies and stay home.
No, this is very, very true. My grandma and people in her generation, they were like regular, not culty people. And they would ask, like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? A lot of people ask that to a 10-year-old. And I would say, I want to be the president of the United States, because I was a nerd and I loved history, and I was like, that's me. And then I heard about Condoleezza Rice, and I was like, I want to be Secretary of State. I want to help solve all the problems for the president. And I remember being told, oh, you can't be the president. After I told this to my grandma's friends, and my parents were like, oh, like, God wants a man to be the president, not a woman. So then I said, oh, I'll be the first lady. And then I was told, like, you just want a lot of attention. Like, you should not want that much attention. We don't want you to have a big head. You just want to be this because you are proud. That's what they would tell me. So then I realized that my answer was inappropriate. So I had to come up with an appropriate answer. And so I came up with, I want to be a teacher and homeschool my kids. I don't think I ever said I want to be a wife and mother, because I just, like, everything in me was like, no, no, thank you. But I did want to be a teacher, and I like created lesson plans for my future kids. I was like, on Monday, we will listen to classical music when they wake up. On Tuesday, they will listen to French. On Wednesday, they will like listen to an audiobook. And like, I had like all these like future lesson plans for my kids, because I loved creating like structure. Can you tell I have ADHD, and I love the fantasy of structure in my life and other people's lives. So that was like something for me. Like, I didn't want to be a wife and kid, so I came up with an acceptable career to be a teacher. And then when I went to college, I started out at college as a middle school education history major, social studies and history, and quickly realized that I was bored out of my mind. Like, I love history, but I didn't want to teach the same lessons over and over again for years on end. So I said, actually, I think I like journalism, and I switched to journalism. And I came home for the holidays, and I visited church again. And one of the church elders came up to me. He's like, "Oh, you're in college." I was like, "Oh, yeah." And he said, "What are you?" I forget. "Are you a nurse?" And I said, "No, I'm actually a journalism major." And he said, "Oh, I thought you went into nursing." I said, "No, like, why would you think that?" And he said, "Well, we've raised women to be helpers. And I think a lot of the girls in our congregation would be good, like, nurses and paramedics because they know how to help people." So I was surprised. I thought you would want to be a nurse too, because I feel like you would be gifted at helping people. And I was taken aback by that. I had no interest in the medical field or nursing or anything of that nature. I'm not equipped to handle working in a hospital. And I was like, absolutely not. I thought to myself, I didn't argue with him. I said, well, I'm going to help people by reporting the news. And that was the end of that conversation. But it struck me that in his mind, women were helpers. You were created to be a helpmate.
So that's what I did. That's what I did. I have 4 kids, and again, don't hear me say I hate my kids. I don't hate my kids, okay? I love my kids. I'm not a monster. But at the end of the day, would I choose to live this life if when I were 15, 16, if I had options, if I had TikTok and social media and I saw people living other lives? Like, there are so many options of what you can do with your life. And all I was told to aspire to be growing up was a wife and a mother. So, in my eyes, at least how I feel right now, organized religion stole my life from me. Because I probably wouldn't have made the same choices that I made to get where I am right now without that knowledge, that voice in my head that said literally everything else is bad and a sin and you're gonna die. And I think that's BS. Like, we gotta do better. We gotta do better. That's a cult. Come on. Like, no. I'm literally telling all of my young friends, you have options. You don't have to get married and have 8 kids right away. You don't. You can literally travel the world. You can be single if you want. You don't have to have kids. You can get married and have no kids. You can get married and have 1 kid or even 2 kids. Why do I have to have 4? Why do I have to have so many? Like, the organized religion is just pushing, like, have so many kids, stay home, raise the kids. I don't know, man. Some days I just feel like this ain't it, but I'm doing it because it's my responsibility. Again, I was an adult. I made the choice. I'm living the choice. Don't hear me complain about that, please. But at the end of the day, I could have made another choice. It just wasn't presented to me. So that just kind of sucks.
It wasn't presented to you because it would have broken down the house of cards of organized religion if people could see that they can live happy, fulfilled lives without sticking to one religious creed and viewing everyone else as bound for hell. For me personally, I'm so frustrated sometimes when I think about it. I am very, 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 very frustrated sometimes at the choice of college I made. I felt like I only had one choice. I remember us driving past Baylor and my dad saying, "If you go there, I will disown you." And for some reason that just like stuck to me for years. My dad felt Baylor had become very liberal and he opposed any sort of liberal influence on a Baptist college. Even though Baylor is a conservative Christian college, my dad thought it was liberal. And I knew that if I applied to schools that were outside the like set lists that my parents would approve of, that not only would I not get them to like take me to college, but I wouldn't get like financial support. I didn't really get financial support, but paying my phone bill while I'm in college, buying my ticket home for the holidays, that sort of thing. So instead of going to a state school, which would have kept me from a lot of student debt, I went to Bob Jones, which is one of the most conservative colleges in the country. And I almost got expelled my senior year because I started questioning a lot of things. And I graduated with close to $50,000 in student loan debt because my parents would not have approved of me going to a state school where I would have qualified for a lot of grants and scholarships and state aid because I had scored high enough for that to go to like the University of Texas or even Texas A&M. The University of Texas was a school I really wanted to go to for their journalism program. Once I realized I loved journalism, I was like, I'll transfer there. And the problem with transferring to a school like that is it has a very liberal reputation. Growing up, I would hear at Republican events, Democrats go to UT, Republicans go to A&M. And I knew if I told my parents, hey, I want to transfer to UT, that it would cause so many problems that I just ended up closing the application. I talked to people. I was like, I want to go to the University of Texas. I really want to transfer. And this is all like the end of my freshman year going into my sophomore year. And my friends talked me out of it. They were like, that's a lot of work. Your parents won't support you and you'll have to make new friends. It's in a big city and you'll go from a school of 5,000 people to a school of like 50,000 people. And you don't even know how to shop at Walmart because of the way your parents raised you. And you're buying a car from your parents. And if you go to the University of Texas, will they let you buy the car from them? And I honestly didn't know. I was scared to ask because my parents are super conservative. And the idea of going to the University of Texas, I think, would have scared them, especially at that time. One of my dreams in life, I guess, is to go to the University of Texas for like a master's. But I don't know. I feel like things have changed at UT because of all of the like state government issues in Texas, and it's not the like school that it was. But it still makes me sad. Like, I was an adult. I did make the choice to stay at my religious Christian college, but I did feel like it was the only safe choice that I could make. And I only applied to one college. I remember at 12 years old saying, oh, I want to go to Harvard. Not that I ever think I could have gotten into Harvard, but my parents saying, that's an ungodly place. You can't go there. And just how big of an impact that made on me, that I had to limit my choices to places that my parents thought were godly. And the idea of me going to an ungodly place would have caused so many problems that I just never considered that I could be a student at a regular college. And if I wanted to go to a regular college, I had to prove that I could be like a missionary student and that I could spread the gospel. And I think that's a lot of issues with evangelicalism and culty religion, is you have to prove that you have a religious motivation to do things. Like if you want to travel, you have to do it because you're a missionary. If you want to read a secular book, you have to do it because you're going to then explain how the author like is writing bad things, and you're going to write a counter narrative to that. I remember I went to a vacation Bible school in my parents' home, at my grandmother's while we were visiting. And I wanted to go, so we went, and the teacher referenced Harry Potter, and I went home and I told my mom, and they were like, oh, you can't go back the next day. And my grandma's like, that's not fair. And I was like, I do want to go back. So in order for me to go back to Vacation Bible School, I had to write a letter to the Vacation Bible School teacher at this Methodist church explaining to her why Harry Potter was sinful, and to show that I was going to stand up for Jesus in this way at a Vacation Bible School. Like, everything you did was, you had to justify it within the confines, the boundaries that the religious organization creates. And it creates a world in which your choices and your options are very limited and trap you into one set path that is very hard to break out of. Someone who I admire a lot is Olivia Plath, and I've never watched Welcome to Plathville. I watch Fundy Fridays recaps of it, but I just am not a big reality TV person. And Olivia Plath went on, it's like a crossover. She went on John Lovett's podcast. I listen to Pod Save America because I'm an evil liberal. She went on John Lovett's podcast. I was like, that is my special interest. And the episode was one of the best episodes. Literally, it was so good. Typically, what I have just found is that people who grew up in Fundy circles are interviewed by people who also grew up in Fundy circles, or people who have studied it a very long time and are very familiar with it and understand it. To have John Lovett, who worked for Obama, who was like very far removed from Fundy world and probably doesn't have a good grasp of how it is or how it operates, interviewing her was just so incredible. And he asked some of the best questions. I thought his questions were like so thoughtful. So they brought out such incredible answers and opened the world of fundamentalism to a whole new audience. And it's like an hour-long episode, but if you want, you should watch the whole thing. It's so good. But in the meantime, there's a 2-minute clip or so of it I wanted, because I was thinking about this video I'd seen on TikTok, thinking about how religion traps you, and then Olivia talked about this to John Lovett, and we're just going to watch it, and I think y'all will see exactly what I'm talking about.
You have felt anything missing as you've left behind the kind of more right-wing, kind of closed version of traditional values that you feel like you wish you could have without the other parts of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the first things I noticed in leaving fundamental religion was I didn't know how to have community outside of it. Because when I was growing up, the way that you made friends was you went to church. And there was just always this built-in system to find everything you needed. And if you could go to one place and find everything you need versus having to source everything you need from different places that you are not sure if you should trust anyways, it was a very overwhelming process of being like, okay, so how do I make friends? Where are people even going to make friends? Down to the smallest conversations of like, have you seen this movie? No. You should add it to your list. Why bother? The list is so long.
The list must be so long.
It's so long. Music, movies, books, like all these things. And it just felt really overwhelming. And there was part of me that really craved that structure that I had before, that kind of told me this is exactly how to do things. And the way I described it to my therapist is that before, especially like in these current political times, everything had a structure, right? If I wanted to know how to change the world, there was a formula for it written for me. I went out and did X, Y, Z, and I tried to convert people in this way. And then I said, okay, I've done my part. I've tried to change the world for good. Now I'm sitting here going, how do you change the world for good? How do you make a difference? I have no clue where to start. And sometimes I feel a bit homesick for that structure of how everything was. And then the next moment I'm like, no, I don't want to be in a box. I don't want anyone to put me in a box. I don't want that.
All of everything she said there. I want to talk on how to change the world. There's no one way to change the world, but evangelicalism and culty fundamentalism tells you there is one way to change the world. And when you're able to commit to it, you do see change in your community. I mean, the people at Turning Point USA are seeing that one way to change the world come to fruition. They're seeing results, and it feels good. It validates your persecution complex. It validates that God is working with you. It validates everything you're taught. And when you leave that, you're like, how in the world? How? And this is, I think, a problem for a lot of liberal circles, is people who come out of fundamentalism come into these circles and they think there is one right way to do everything. And they come into tension with other progressives because they bring the fundamentalism, but they don't understand how to leave behind the idea that there's only one right way to do things and that anyone who disagrees with me is wrong. So that's one thing that Olivia so well spoke of in this moment, is talking about the feeling of loss, of purpose, of identity. Like, how do I go about changing the world? I have no freaking clue anymore. And it's like you find community and you just get plugged in, but there's a loss of structure and how that can, like, there's so much structure in fundamentalism, y'all. It's like hard to describe like how structured it is. I mean, the fact that Turning Point USA was able to throw together a massive funeral and with a program and that kept an audience engaged for 6 hours is because of fundamentalism, because it has a lockstep and key to it of structure and identity that keeps you engaged, that knows when to bring in an audience and recapture their attention, that a lot of liberals and people outside of fundamentalisms don't understand how to do and operate. And part of why liberals are not as effective as evangelicals is because evangelicals get behind when it comes to new technology, and we saw that with the Obama campaign. But once they figure out how to incorporate their religion and their fundamentalism with technology, they're almost unstoppable, and that is why it's so freaking dangerous. The second thing she talks about is the loss of like community and realizing you know nothing about culture and the world, and you are a fish out of water and you have no idea how to make friends or how to socialize or how to get along with people. It's why I think sometimes my boyfriend is like, are you sure you're not autistic? And I'm like, no, I don't think it's autism. It's neurodivergence because I have ADHD. But part of it is I'm an adult, but I'm still figuring out how to socialize without relying on the gimmicks of church life. Because in church, there's a formula. I keep saying formula, but really church teaches you how to talk to people. And when you leave church, you don't know how to communicate with people and you feel very isolated and lonely. It's uncomfortable. And I think that one way the church keeps us trapped is by teaching us a socialization that is very hard to break free from. And when I watch like shows like Sex and the City or Seinfeld or Parks and Rec or The Office, yes, they're comedies, they're exaggerated, but the ease in which they socialize and how they get along amazes me. It is something I am transfixed by, especially in Sex and the City, because those kind of friendships that can just talk about anything and get along and don't feel motivated by evangelical fervor is foreign to former evangelicals, and is something that I kind of long for, and I'm slowly gaining as an adult. And I think I have worked very hard over the last 5 years to find. When I first moved to Florida and when I first met my boyfriend, he teased me because all of my friends were in their 60s. I was really good at making friendships with older retired people. And I think it's because church adultifies you and makes you more grown up than you are. And I'm give massive shout out to my boyfriend, but his social circle was younger, in their 30s, and I started hanging out with them very regularly because he took me to hang out with his friends, and we went to places where young people hung out, and I just started actually understanding how people in their 30s got along with each other. I would tell him things that would happen, interactions I would have with my coworkers. I would say, oh, I don't think my coworkers like me. And he would say, babe, because you respond weirdly. And it's not your fault. You were raised to respond this way, but they're perceiving it as weird. And it took me a long time to work through that. For a long time, I thought that I just was an oddball. And no, it's not your fault. The church and culty people make you an oddball. And honestly, to each their own. You're allowed to be weird and socially awkward and odd. But when it's used as a method to keep you trapped and controlled, that's when it's bad. It's not a negative, except for the fact that it's used as a tool and method of control. Olivia also talks about the freedom of not knowing, of after her brother's death, of allowing herself to not know what's next. And I have dealt with that very personally. I think I've talked about it a little bit on this channel before. After my grandmother died, I thought, I want to see her in heaven. Now I don't believe in heaven, and it's hard. There is a grief that will be my entire life of the surety I had as a little girl. When people died, people would say, we're going to see them one day. And that helped me process grief as a child and as a teenager and a young adult. And now I don't have that. And it is difficult. And there is a process of grief that happens now that I think evangelicals don't go through, because they think I'm going to see them, or they believe I'm going to see my loved one again one day. So they don't let themselves fully feel grief, because there is a different level of grief when you do not believe in heaven and you do not believe you'll be reunited in that way with your loved one. And evangelicals always taught, at least in my circles, that because people didn't believe in heaven, they didn't have the hope that they had, that they were miserable and sad and lonely, and that death was awful. And yes, death is awful. The people that I have lost, and even thinking about once my parents pass away, all of that is awful. It is really hard. But I think evangelicals have a false sense of cheer when it comes to grief that I think masks and covers up your actual feelings through the loss of a loved one. And I prefer to feel my actual feelings instead of giving myself false comfort and telling myself that I don't need to be sad because I will see them again. Because that is literally what I was taught, is you can be sad when your loved one dies, but you shouldn't be, because you need to show the world that you're actually happy that you will be in heaven with them one day. And what a messed up thing to say to an 11-year-old who lost her dearly beloved aunt, who this was the first death I had gone through, and I remember being devastated and just feeling physically unable to handle that load of grief. And then my dad had us memorize a passage about death and quote it at my aunt's funeral. and then told us that being sad would show to non-believers that we didn't really believe the Bible, so we shouldn't be so sad in public. That's fucked up. That is fucked up. I haven't thought about that in years. But yeah, that is one way the church absolutely tries to control your emotions and your natural responses to really fucking hard things. As I was thinking about this video, this is so random, but as I was thinking about this video, I opened Reddit. I have a Reddit subreddit that I'm in. I just like to browse it most of the time. And it's a subreddit for my city. And someone posted in it. They said, hey, I'm a 20-something-year-old. I just left the church and I don't know how to have friends. I don't have a third space. I don't know where to find friends. I've lost my entire community. What should I do? Where should I go? And as I read that, I'm reminded that this experience that Olivia Plath shared and this person on TikTok shared and that I'm talking about is actual real life for people. It's not just something I experienced. And seeing Olivia Plath share it, oh, it was like so good. Sorry for crying, y'all. But it was like so like validating, like to see it on like a national podcast with Obama's former speechwriter. But then I read that on Reddit, and not only did my heart break for them, but I was like, you're not alone. There are a lot of us out there. So I commented some ideas. Mentioned some Instagram groups or Instagram pages that organize events for people in their age group and their identities that they shared. And I just hope the best for that young person. And I hope in this city where I live that they are able to connect with people who are like their age, who are like-minded, that they're able to re-find that third space and heal from a life of culty traps. And that, I guess, is how I'm going to end this video, is saying that it is possible to find your community after leaving culty religion, that it is hard, it's a lifetime struggle. I don't think I'll ever be over it. Sometimes I'm like, I really want to stop talking about this. I want to stop being like, I grew up in a cult. And the other times I'm like, no, it's like actually different things will bring it up for you. Different memories, different phases of your life will remind you of what was robbed from you, of the control that was used in your life to indoctrinate you. And those are hard days, but it is worth leaving to re-find your voice, your own self. I don't want to keep rambling because I could talk about this, I think, forever because I'm like worked up and emotional right now. But anyway, thanks for watching, y'all. I have posted quite a few videos lately. They haven't been performing that great, which is such a bummer. But I did a video on Steak and Shake and the history of what their feud with Cracker Barrel, and I think it's really funny. So just like an odd kind of story. So if you want to watch that video, I will link it at the end of this video. It way underperformed. Apparently going live on YouTube can mess up your analytics, is what I'm gathering, because none of my videos are performing that well. And like, it's not about the performance. I love making YouTube videos, but it is a bummer when they are not getting shared to my audience and YouTube is like, your audience isn't watching as many videos as usual. It will literally tell you your audience isn't watching this as they do other videos. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I did everything right. Maybe I should have made a video about a different topic, but I spent hours reading about Steak and Shake and their stupid beef tallow fries for y'all and watching stupid RFK videos for that video. So please give it a watch. If you haven't, I mean, you can mute it. You don't have to even listen to it. Just let the algorithm know that some people in my audience might like it. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. Thanks for supporting. If this video spoke to you in any way, if you have a similar experience, let me know in the comments, and I will see y'all all around the internet. Till next time, see ya.
We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service.